Inexcusable. Inexcusable. All I know is that the one word that keeps popping in Wardy's mind right now is inexcusable. If you're wondering, Wardy, why is that? Why are you saying inexcusable so much? Well, when the Metsies go into Anaheim, playing the depleted LA Halos, and drop this series, having it for the first time this year, the Mets lose back-to-back games by one measly run of a differential, your guy Wardy's gonna have a problem. And we have a lot to break down in today's high-headed session of our post-game rants that we're going to now get into, as the Metsies 5 games above 500, now at least a game and a half out of the wild card, just as they work so hard to get to where they've gone this season. And trust me when I say that is far from the sky is falling, the year is not over, or anything like that. However, we got to call things a buck when they are exactly that. And right now for the Mets, they're not playing good baseball, and to drop a series against the Angels has and will always be simply inexcusable. In today's show, everybody, we're going to break down inning by inning what transpired as the Metsies somehow falter here by a final score of 3-2. Their offensive inconsistencies continue. How concerned should we be as fans? We have a lot of key updates that we're going to get into that I'm actually going to post as a separate video entirely after we're live here, getting into the latest updates on Starling Marte, Sean Reed-Foley, Reed Garrett, and Danil Nunez, because if we're going to look at any positives come out of a loss today, it is knowing that Mets reinforcements are coming, and they are coming soon. A lot to get into on this matchup that was frustrating to say the least. I'm still mind-boggled on how this ball game played out the way it did, from the way Jose Quintana labored early to then still giving the Mets at least 5 innings, and then this offense having nothing to show for it whatsoever. You might as well call it every single pitcher that we saw from the Angels for the most part in this 3-game set. Cy Young himself or Randy Johnson, the way that they dominated and carved up these Mets batters. These Mets hitters were flailing. They look completely out of it more often than not, and they falter in this series, dropping 2 games out of 3. And again, just as we finally climbed ourselves out of the hole that we found ourselves in, the Mets sit at minimum a game and a half out of the wild card. And yeah, just to add some insult to injury to make this even worse than what it already was, the Braves have not been playing good baseball. The Phillies have not been playing good baseball, even if they won today with Zach Wheeler's dominance. Not exactly I'm sure what happened there. All I know is the Braves dropped it. They split their series, I believe, to the Miami Marlins. The Mets did nothing to gain ground there, and every game matters now, folks. We've been saying it all year long, but when you got right around 50 games left on the season, the D-backs add the way that they did, the Pirates add the way that they did, the Padres add the way that they did, with all these teams right in the mix of the wild card continuing to win the way that the Padres and the Diamondbacks are right now, it is simply inexcusable to drop any series remotely close to this one, not only against a lesser Ron Washington-led LA Angels, LA Halos, whatever you want to call them, the LA Angels of Anaheim, because yes, it's as stupid as it sounds. We're not only going to talk about this series falling flat on its face, but how the Mets need to make sure they cannot let this slip away from them before this 10-game road trip feels like it even began here. You still got a bunch, 7 more games to handle. This is a road trip that if you go below 500 in itself is inexcusable. We got Mets fans going out of their way to say that if you're not at least 6-4 or 7-3 in this series, it's inexcusable. We have a lot to get into in this one. My goodness, my God, my gracious. Let's get into the latest WardyNYM rant here. As you see from the highlights, folks, we have a lot to get into in this matchup with the Mets faltering. On the pitching end, we're going to highlight Jose Quintana's very shaky outing, but even with the shakiness, Jose Quintana was far from the Mets' biggest problem today, as it was once again their inconsistent offense. On the hitting end, speaking of the devil, we're going to talk about the continued woes for the Mets. Now, going back to July 14th, have the worst batting average in all Major League Baseball, not named the 20 straight loss Chicago White Sox. For the past 3 weeks now with runners in scoring position, the Mets aren't even batting 190 in that regard since July 14th. So yeah, if you have some concerns on the offensive end, they're justified. Do I think the Mets will be able to get out of the rut they find themselves currently in? I do. However, if they get out of that rut, will it be too little too late for them as they continue to climb and battle in this wild card card race up until the very end. We've seen the Mets dig themselves out of 11 games below 500, but that's when everyone else in the NL Central decide to not play competent baseball. Teams are picking it up. Teams bought big time at the trade deadline. They overbought, to say the least, given the prospects that they gave up to acquire said players, and now they're looking to go all in, while the Metsies, again, still within reach of a wild card spot, can quickly let this get out of their grasp should they falter in their game one set. And a heated matchup now against the St. Louis Cardinals, and yes, it is a scheduling joke, to say the least. We're going to get into all that here shortly, everybody. Don't you worry. I see my man Zach with the $2 haul in here. Thank you so much for that, Zach. I appreciate that. Day game since July 5th to the 8th, average 3 runs per game. Thank you so much for shedding some light, Zach, on the day game epidemic for the Mets this year, because it continues. In case you guys have been living under a rock, yeah, this Mets team has been absolutely horrendous in day games this season. If you're wondering, Wardy, they can't be that bad in day games, right? Oh, they're bad. The Mets are right around 10 games below 500, if not worse, in day games this season. In weekend games, Saturday and Sunday, it felt like that they didn't win more than one throughout the first couple months of the season, with how much it was doom and gloom at Citi Field there with the wacky weather to kick off the season. Alisi Joseph with the $5 haul. Thank you so much for that, Joseph. I really appreciate that. One good losing streak by any of the 10 wildcard teams, and you are in trouble, and kiss goodbye on trying to crack wildcard. I agree with you 100%, my man. I greatly appreciate the donation. Thank you so much for that. It is a heated battle for each and every one of these teams right now, folks, and we have a lot to get into on this one. Josh, great member. Rebecca, great member. D-Mac, great member. Shout out to Ricky, great member. If you're watching us live or on replay, happy to have each and every one of you in. Make sure to smash a like and subscribe button as your first time in the show. Greatly appreciate, folks. To all my live viewers watching live on Twitter X, either on my personal platform or our now new platform on X. We have 2 accounts. One's my personal, one is just mainly for WardyNYM YouTube, where we have over 60,000 strong there. So all my viewers on X, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to hit that like, that follow button, that retweet button. But please know, as always, your boy Wardy is going to interact with solely our live show here on the YouTube platform. So head over to the channel if you haven't already. Get involved. I look to see you there so we can break down this ball game and this godforsaken series together. I just got to ask everybody, let's do a quick roll call. Again, I got a lot to get into. I know that you guys have a lot to say, a lot to rant about. Yoshima with the $5 haul says, yesterday sucked, but this game got me heated. Embarrassing and inexcusable to drop a series to the Angels. Need a win tomorrow in St. Louis. Now, again, I think that's an understatement. Appreciate you guys, but I want to know, everybody, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your frustration level after the Mets drop 2 out of 3 here in Anaheim against the Angels? Let's get into it, everybody. Thank you all so much for taking the time to comment, watching live on a replay. That is appreciated, but I want to see from you Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of, what is your biggest takeaway on a scale of 1 to 10? What is that frustration level at right now? We'll check. They finish, May, I meant to say, with 9. The Mets season as follows is the following: in April, 15 and 11. May, terrible, 9 and 19. June, 16 and 8. July, 17 and 10. So for 2 months straight, the Mets have been playing really strong baseball, but kickoff August, not the ideal start that you want to see for anyone, understandably so. So now let's get into this one, everybody, because we saw on the mound today, we saw Jose Quintana, a soft-tossing southpaw that you're hoping you're going to get a solid outing out of. This is the same Jose Quintana that gave the Mets at least, a sub-2 ERA over the past 8 collective starts that he has had with the Mets. So Quintana's been nails. Would he be nails tonight? Sadly, he would not be, because as we see in this ball game, folks, in the top of the first, we have Jose Quintana matching up here against the right-hander for the Halos, who is far from dominant, yet the Mets made this guy look like the second coming to Cy Young, because of course they did, and that was in Manning, I believe his name, and Canning, rather. Canning with a 5.1 ERA gets the victory, because of course he does. No less, Lindor gets on with a walk here to kick off the ball game, folks, at the top of the first. He then gets to third base after a Brandon Nimmo strikeout, because it was potentially a strike him out, throw him out double play, but no, Nimmo strikes out. Lindor steals second base, and the throw by Ohapi was horrendous. It gets past the second baseman there, and Renifo, or whoever was playing there at the time, and that gets him a third base. Mets have a runner at third with just 1 out. Surely they're going to score the runner. Surely they're going to drive the runner in, if only that were the truth. The Mets would go down from there. They would not drive in Lindor at the hot corner, and that is absolutely inexcusable. Pete Alonso, JDM cannot get the job done. The Mets leave a runner on third with 1 out to kick off the ball game. In the bottom of the first, we see Nito, who killed the Mets. Zach Nito in the matchup yesterday. The number 9 hitter for the Halos yesterday had an RBI single and then a 3-run tank against Huascar Brazoban to ultimately win it for the Angels. He gets on base with a walk to kick this ball game off. Then we would see O'Hoppe strikes out. We see Nito steal his 20th bag of the year, and Kevin Pillar thankfully strikes out to end the inning. Former Met turned foe, who was Superman, with a fantastic gap-to-gap double robbing catch off of Francisco Lindor yesterday to kick off the ball game. Thankfully, Pilar did not have a flair for the dramatic in this matchup either. Kevin, who will be retiring at the end of the season unless he has a guaranteed contract and role with a solid organization. Should that be the case and he does not sign with a team, wishing Pilar the absolute best in his retirement, who's having a fantastic walk-off year, should that be the case. Going out on his terms and not because the body's breaking down. That is the best way to do it, and I commend Pilar if he's going to go out in that fashion. No less, we see in the top of the second, everybody, Jesse Winker strikes out looking. That was a tough at-bat for Jesse. Would have loved to see him drive a ball even opposite field there. Did not happen. Vientos strikes out. Mark Vientos had a less than ideal series, both offensively and defensively. Hurt the Mets quite a bit in this one. And while we did see, I think, at least one solid hit in said series, maybe it's going back to game one, Vientos just not providing enough that you're looking for, per se, especially in the case on the defensive end where it stuck out more than we've seen of recent, especially in this road trip to kick things off against the Anaheim Angels, or the Angels of Anaheim, however you would like to call it. And everybody, I also did want to mention, in case you didn't check it out yesterday, I did come out with a video from yesterday's post-game segment on the latest updates with Mets top pitching prospect, Brandon Sproat. Highly implore you all to check that out in case you haven't already. We broke down how Brandon Sproat is now closer than ever to being called up by the Mets this season and why exactly that is. Check out the video in case you haven't already. But Winker, Vientos go down here. Alvarez gets on safely somehow. Alvy getting the start over Trent today. Alvarez, who had not the best day at the plate catching-wise, but still kept Quintana and the Mets in this one. And offensively, you know, a little bit to be desired, to say the least. Alvy still working back from his shoulder injury that he sustained post-All-Star break. You could tell that he's still not as comfortable as what you're hoping for there. No less, we see Alvarez gets on base thanks to an error by the first baseman, the Halos. McNeil gets on with a walk, and Harrison Bader continues to have the clutch gene. Bader with an RBI single to give the Mets a 1-0 lead here. Great base running by Alvy to get all the way home there, and a huge first run score of the day by the Mets, as they would take the lead, but still ultimately falter in this one. And they would falter because as we would get into this one, the Mets are up 1-0 throughout the first 2 innings of play. How do things change from here? Well, they change drastically. And it starts that we see in the bottom of the second for Jose Quintana, who gives up a single to a fellow T-Ward. No, not me, Tyler, but this time Taylor gets on with a single. Joe Adell with his 10th double of the year. 2 runners in scoring position, no out here, and the ball game's tied because of course it is. Charles LeBlanc walks, and we would see then Matt Tice drive in a run comes in on a wild pitch. They call this a wild pitch. Some were arguing it was a pass ball because of Alvarez having that one knee up there for his frame job at the moment. All he knows is it got past Alvarez. It sucks, and just like that, the ball game is tied. Not ideal at all. LeBlanc gets on base, so you have runners at the corners there, less than 2 out, and then we see Matt Tice would be out on a sac fly, which would give the Halos a 2-1 lead, and the Angels, when it came to the lead, sadly, would never look back. We would then see Stefanik and Chenul go down in order, but not without doing damage as the Halos, as they take a 2-1 lead on Jose Quintana, who Jose got absolutely worked throughout the first 2 innings of work today. And again, that's the reason why he only won 5. The fact that Jose Quintana won 5 innings today after getting worked his first 2 to 3 was honestly surprising. Didn't see that happening, but I appreciate some length for Quintana, who simply did not have it today whatsoever. JD Martinez then gets on with a walk that we see there, and Pete Alonso promptly grounds into a double play to end the inning. In the bottom of the third, we see Zach Nito rip a triple, his first of the season. Logan Webb gets on with a walk. Another inning where runners are out the corners with less than 2 outs for the Halos, and Kevin Pillar kills the Mets again, this time with a sac fly, makes it 3-1 for the Angels. Taylor gets on with a hit by pitch, 2-1, less than 2 out for Joe Adell, who lines out sharply, so runners out the corners for Charles LeBlanc, who thankfully would fly out to escape the jam for Jose Quintana there, at least without giving up more than 1 run. It's 3-1, Angels lead here through 3, not ideal, as Vientos and Alvarez would strike out back-to-back to end the fourth. And the bottom of the fourth, we would see Stefanik get on with a 1-out walk, and thankfully Nolan Chenul grounds into a double play. Nice double play ball there. Turn from Jose Quintana and that Mets infield to get out of that jam unscathed. And Jeff McNeil, who continues to flare for the dramatic with Jeff McDoubles, rips his 20th double of the season. Jeff was this close to having a double secured yesterday, slid just over it yesterday. They called him out. McNeil makes up for it today with a double that we see. And there's a runner in scoring position for the Mets. So what do? 1 out later, Francisco Lindor provides the clutchness as well. Lindor would drive in the run, thankfully, on a single. That makes it a 1-run ball game as Brandon Nimmo then gets on base. 2 on, less than 2 out here for the Mets. They just got to do some damage. And all JD Martinez needs to do is advance the runner, and Pete Alonso needs to hit, and neither of those things happen. JDM flies out sadly. Runners stay put at first and second. And Alonso flies out as well to Joe Adell to end the inning. So JDM, Pete Alonso, nothing to show for it. Pete continues his inconsistent play here for the Mets. Kevin Pillar strikes out for a 1-2-3 inning. The final line for Jose Quintana, everybody, would be as follows. I want to see from you, what is your final line grade on a scale of 1 to 10 for Jose Quintana, giving the Mets just 5 innings of 3 hit, 3 earned run, 4 walk, 4 strikeout ball, a sub-4 ERA on the season for Jose Quintana. But Jose, again, with a lack of ability to command the zone well early on against a Halos team is always an excusable, 1. But 2, for the Mets to then have to work the bullpen the way that they did, knowing that they have such a short turnaround against the St. Louis Cardinals, 2 is less than ideal. For me, again, without getting into any deep numbers on Jose Quintana and his less than ideal outing, I'm going to give Jose Quintana a 4 out of 10 for the Mets today. He is not the sole reason why the Mets lost this by any stretch, but he didn't really help all that much either, outside of working his Houdini magic to escape some jams and also work at least 1-2-3 inning in his 5 innings. So Jose Quintana, I am giving him a 4 out of 10. That's how I feel. I would have gave him higher if this game had a bigger flair for the dramatic in a positive manner for the Mets, whether it was on the pitching end or the offensive end. But not much there, obviously. And on the pitching end, Jose Quintana, while he wasn't horrendous, those 4 walks are always going to bite you in the ass. And I will always have an intolerance for high walk rates with Mets starting pitchers. That's just how it's going to go. Even for newcomers, I'm always going to be against those high walk rates. You got to have them down. Jose Quintana, those walks bit him in the butt today, which I don't appreciate. But you know what I don't appreciate even more? I don't appreciate the Mets not winning a game against the LA Angels where they scored just 2 measly runs and lose 3-2. That in itself is a big bugaboo today, and that in itself is exactly why I'm not really going to grill into Jose Quintana all that much, because the offense is where this loss and where this series defeat ultimately falls upon. And speaking of the series defeat, as we get back into breaking down the ball game, we then see in the top of the 6th for the Mets, Francisco Alvarez gets on base for the 2nd time of the day, this time with a single. That's all she wrote, though. Then we see they go down in order. Adam Ottavino strikes out the first 2 batters he faces, Taylor Ward and Joe Adell, and then he gets a ground out on LeBlanc. Adam Ottavino with a 1-2-3 inning. The Mets go down in order 1-2-3 in the top of the 7th. In the bottom of the 7th, Danny Young works a 1-2-3 inning of work, including 1 strikeout on Stefanik. As we then get to the 8th, we would see there for the Metsies, Pete Alonso gets on with a hit by pitch. Jesse Winker rips one through the hole between 1st and 2nd. Winker's first big hit as a Met. The reason why I say that is Winker's other singles have been without guys on base and with, I'm pretty sure, like no outs, or at least at most 1 out. This was 1 out and with 1 on here for Jesse Winker later in the ball game. We appreciate that. Winker, who has tremendous clutch numbers, high leverage situations, tight ball games, all those great numbers, has not showcased them whatsoever in a very limited sample size this past week with the Mets. So hopefully that can start soon, and hopefully that single is a step in the right direction. We would then see pinch runner Tyrone Taylor come in and replace Jesse Winker. But then we see again Tyrone Taylor come in, and he's not even stealing bags, which I think is very frustrating. Because 1, why are you going to have Tyrone in this situation to come pinch run for Jesse Winker? You're taking Jesse's bat out for the remainder of the ball game, regardless on who you're facing handedness on the pitching end, because you want more of a speed demon in the outfield or more defensive range. I understand that, and a greater ability on the bags. But I'm sorry, Jesse Winker's the one with the 14 stolen bags this year, not Tyrone Taylor. Jesse might not have Tyrone Taylor's speed, but what Jesse Winker has had this season has been a higher base running IQ and awareness than Tyrone Taylor. So enlighten me how it makes it all any sense in the realm of imagination, let alone reality here, which is Carlos Mendoza and the Mets to run Tyrone Taylor, not run him here. Why even pinch run him? I did not think that this was necessary. Instead, Mark Vientos still somehow, some way grounds into a double play. That does it for the inning. The rally is dead as soon as you thought maybe it could start, and the Metsies go down big time here in the 8th, and they will go down in this ball game. We would see Phil Maton come in. He would give up a single to Logan O'Hoppe and then strike out 3 batters in Nito, Pilar, and Ward. Phil Maton did his part in this Mets bullpen, and how this Mets offense repay him, they strike out an Alvarez on a foul tip. McNeil flies out, and Harrison Bader strikes out. 2 out of 3 strikeouts are your final 3 batters. No life. You didn't even face Ben Joyce in the 9th tonight. I understand JDM not hitting a 105-mile-per-hour fastball even down the pipe. The average batter in baseball, even well above average, likely isn't hitting that shit. But I'm sorry, against Contreras, who had your number a couple days ago to kick off the series, has his number against you again. That in itself is once again inexcusable. Another frustrating aspect to the Mets series defeat here is that they had multiple opportunities to just go out and grab it, and instead they did not, and I mean not, get the job done there. Taylor did steal Vientos' foul to pitch off. No, I'm sorry, you were completely right, and I'm not going to lie, that is me completely box scoring there because I missed a part of the 8th inning, so I completely believe you on that front. Literally every time, I swear, I go to use the bathroom or I go to make myself a sandwich or something, it feels like an entire inning happens because of how fast games go for the Mets, especially if they're low-scoring games like this. So I apologize. I retract my previous statements. I still think it's head-scratching to run for Jesse Winker in certain situations as if he isn't a base-stealing threat himself when he absolutely is. He might not be superior on the speed, but he is superior in his base-running ability this year. For whatever reason, it's been working for him, so I'd like to see that utilized by Jesse. Instead, we limit his abilities after having a nice clutch single, and we repay him by having Taylor come in. Taylor, again, goes and he steals the bag, but because Vientos foul tipped it that we saw, that continues things that ultimately leads then to the double play. So I do apologize there. You are 100% right. My mistake. But I hope you guys get what I'm saying, though. Still, in the case of Jesse Winker, he's been a guy that's been able to steal bags playing this year. Why not trust him in that situation? Again, it wasn't a terrible idea by Mendoza because it initially had success, but it fell flat on its face after Vientos fouls that went off, and then he induces the ground ball, as we mentioned. Vientos, who's not known for his speed by any stretch, he's known for his bat-to-ball skills first and foremost, was not able to do enough for the Mets as they again go down and lose this one by a final score of 3-2, everybody. And thank you all so much in advance for hearing a quick word from today's video sponsor, America's #1 sportsbook at BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Alrighty, folks, if you were watching last night's post-game segment, which I know very few of you were because it was a late-night show where the Mets lost, so how much interest do you really have? Don't worry, got you covered today as we're recapping our picks from last night, a 2-leg parlay for today's showing, one of which was to make sure the White Sox lost their 20th straight. That hit easy money, along with the Cardinals winning over the Cubs. Not that I wish it in this wild card race and with the Mets playing the Cards tomorrow, but being a rational sports bettor, putting my biased Mets cap aside, I like the Cardinals in their series finale against the Cubs here after not looking so great the past couple of games. And in the case of the Cardinals, they are already up 2-0 the bottom of the third here against Chicago. Again, would I love for that bet to not hit for the sake of the Mets still having around the wild card over St. Louis the way that they do? Yes, but do I understand that at least if there's any silver lining to the Cardinals playing well, I can win some money from? Yes, I understand that too. And speaking of the Cardinals and the Mets, they match up tomorrow, and we take a look here at the current line. Basically around same even odds. The Mets are the slight favorite that we see there at -110 with +150 to make sure that they win by at least 2 runs, basically, where +150 odds are certainly juicy. 110, it's a coin flip on this one, everybody, and I'm not inclined to bet on the Mets simply because this is a Mets team that has a 1 game in St. Louis. The fact that we may need to defer to Steve Gelbs as the lone man in the booth tomorrow is enough reasons to say that's going to be a bad day in Mets land to kick off the week this Monday. So for those reasons, I'm going to stay away from this game entirely because I have no clue what's going to happen. I don't want my biased Mets fan self to get in the way of what can potentially be a solid bet. As we take a look at the Red Sox, Royals, Diamondbacks, Guardians, now we're talking, these are some exciting matchups that we have here for the Monday slate games. The Diamondbacks and Guardians is a huge one, and I desperately want the Diamondbacks to lose. And as much as the Diamondbacks have been on an absolute heater, the Guardians, who just lost in their series finale against the Orioles today, I want to see the Guardians step up and take game one here at home against the D-backs. Prove that you should not be the underdog here. Let's take them at 110 on those odds. I like that a lot. I did not mean to click that. I apologize, folks. Again, I'm going to make sure that we have these bets rolling out for you as consistent as possible with our great friends at BetUS. But we're going to go with the Guardians here at plus 110. Then we were also going to look at the Kansas City Royals and Red Sox matchup. That's a coin flip as well. Phillies Dodgers is a coin flip for sure too. We're gonna go with the Dodgers here. I'm actually gonna go to LA 126. We have seen the Phillies not look so great on their road trip to this point. Zach Wheeler was dominant, but the offense has been Jekyll and Hyde for the Phillies over their past 10 plus games. I'm gonna go Dodgers and Guardians as a 2-leg parlay that should win you some nice money for sure on those odds at over plus 100, obviously. So let me know how you guys feel about that 2-pick parlay. Good luck to everybody that places their bets, and make sure that you bet responsibly with our great friends at BetUS. But now to hop back in this one, and tomorrow, folks, we will go over those bets and see if we hit or if we did in fact lose on them. No problem if we do, but at least we're doing it responsibly with BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. Now to get back in this one, folks, I do want to highlight a little bit there on the pitching end for Jose Quintana. Nothing crazy, just want to see what was a bugaboo for him today, and a bugaboo that we noticed early on, and shout out Ron on the broadcast for making note of this as well, was his curveball usage. We saw Jose Quintana today go from a guy that last time out there was throwing the curveball at a ridiculous rate to now, yes, he utilized it a bit today, 28% of the arsenal, tied with his sinker, topped out 79, sat 78 there, just up on the velo. Sinker topped out 93, sat 91, forcing fastball, 25% of the arsenal, topped out 93, sat 90, just around a mile per hour, actually higher from the year average right now. 91 is where it's, the minimum was 90, I should say. The year average is 91 on that pitch today versus it being 90.5 in the season. Changeup, that is 13% of the arsenal, topped out 87, sat right around 86. That was a little down in the slurve, sitting right around 78 miles per hour as well. And for Jose Quintana today, he just didn't induce the swing and miss that he was hoping for. You know, he had a 25% whiff rate on that curveball, only had 2 whiffs out of 8 swings. The sinker was a bugaboo for him today too, because he didn't induce as many ground balls that he was hoping for. You know, he had 14 swings on the sinker, just 3 whiffs. The four-seam fastball, just 2 whiffs on the 6 swings that we saw. The changeup, just 1 whiff on the 4 times that batters were swinging on it, and there were 0 whiffs when it was swung on twice on the slurve. So gave up some hard contact in Jose Quintana today. Didn't have some luck on his side either, but just looked like a guy that really struggled to command the zone, was laboring early, and looked like a Quintana that I thought was going to be pulled from this game within the first 2.5, 3 innings. So the fact that Jose Quintana still gave the Mets 5 innings of work was honestly surprising when you look at the grand scheme of things with his lack of consistency in this outing. And on the bullpen front, Ottavino, Yun, Maton, they did their job for sure, so I'm not complaining much there. But on the offensive end, that's where we have, without question, our biggest gripe with the Mets at the moment, folks. Because actually, let me pull this up. Let's see what StatMuse has to say. Let's look. Mets offense ranking since July 14th. See if we can pull anything up here. Okay, I actually will have to do it through Fangraphs, and that's not... Let's do it all together now, folks. I'm not just going to look at the offensive numbers today. I want to highlight how much has this Mets offense been inconsistent and for how long. And the easiest way to find that are a couple different ways, but I'm going to go and defer to Fangraphs here, which I know are going to find exactly what I'm looking for. Fangraphs, where you can find every little detail about a player and about a team, lots of advanced information that you're looking for. You can also set timelines. So, like, say you know that Lindor started batting leadoff since May 18th. You look at Lindor's numbers since May 18th, gives you some context on how well he's been playing now in the groove of things in the leadoff position. In the case of the Mets offense, let's now talk about going to July 14th. Since July 14th, the Mets have had the second worst batting average with runners in scoring position, only trailing the 20 straight loss Chicago White Sox in that span. Let's see how they are currently looking on the offensive metrics on Team WAR, among others, right now. And for the Mets, let's see here in 43 games. No, that is not an accurate report here, because this has to be from July 14th, and I have it here like a dummy. from June 15th. So let's do July 14th instead. And now let's update this thing and see how it looks. Okay, since July 14th, the Mets still have the seventh best ranked offense in Major League Baseball with a 3.4 WAR. They trail the Yankees at first with roughly a double WAR at 6.1, as the Yanks have torn the cover off the ball, especially since acquiring Jazz Chisholm. Throughout this time, for the Mets that we've seen on the hitting end, they've had a 117 WRC plus, 17% better than the average batters in baseball, and right within, top 10 range there. So funny enough, the Mets offensive numbers aren't horrendous, but you do notice that on the team batting average, it has definitely slumped big time. Not that average means everything, but it's slumped for sure for the Mets in the offensive end, as they have been sitting with the 13th, where are we seeing? The 13th worst in 252 on the average, 330 on the on-base percentage, and a 406 slug. Again, not horrendous offensive numbers, but the runners in scoring position is inexcusable to not be better to not even have a 190 batting average throughout the past 3 weeks in that regard, not ideal. But on the home run hitting, the Mets have 22 home runs. They have 75 runs scored and 73 RBIs throughout that span. So on the run scored aspect, the Mets are 9th in baseball over the past 3 weeks. And RBIs, the Mets currently sit 9th in baseball. So the Mets have still been well within a top 10 offense in the game throughout the past 3 weeks, but they have definitely been far more inconsistent than what they were, where they were dominant, tearing the cover off the ball and being like the most electrifying offense for a month and a half at the major league level this year. D-Mac with a $2 haul says, need better small situational balls, bats to ball skills when bats are cold. 100% I agree with you there for sure. And you can't twinkle fairy dust on the Mets to help them win. They have to make it happen. Not confident they can do this consistently enough. I don't blame people for having a lack of confidence, but I will say the Mets have played better baseball this season than they have played bad baseball. And if you're wondering, Wardy, how's that possible? It really is, because the Mets have had a winning record in every month not named May, and we're going to exclude August because we're just 4 days out here right now. Again, the Mets this season, let's not forget here, as they went month by month, 15-11 there in the month of April. 0-3 in the month of March, but that's baloney. 15-11 in April, 9-19 in May, 16-8 in June, 17-10 in July. I am far from inclined to believe that this Mets team is free-falling right now, that they're going to completely fall flat on their face. If it happens, we'll talk about it. I'm going to rant about it, but in the interim, this Mets team is still well within striking distance, which is why, as inexcusable as a series defeat as this was, I am not at the point yet of saying, oh my goodness, the season's over, cancel it, whatever it may be, yada, yada, yada. This Mets team has still worked from so far down to get to where they've gone this season that I'm not going to lose hope from them whatsoever yet. A 6-4 road trip is still well within reach, but it means that you have to win 6 of your next 7 road games, which is a far from easy thing to do. But what's also what felt like a far from easy thing to do was to lose a series against the Angels, losing by 1 run in back-to-back games where you're within reach offensively, but yet we found ourselves dealing with that reality. So for the Mets here, we know that in the case of them getting back to where they need to be, you just got to keep winning, baby. I mean, just win, baby. As simple as Joe Namath would say, you just got to do it. And if you could just win, you're going to put yourself in the right position each and every day to get back in that wild card spot and do some damage. And then when we get to the Diamondbacks, when we get to the Padres, that is where all hell will break loose if it hasn't already, because those series will mean everything. The magnitude behind the series against the Diamondbacks and the Padres later this year is higher than ever before, with the way that these teams are rolling in the wild card race and the way that the Mets are in dire need of making sure that they can stay afloat and make sure that they do not fall 3-4 games out of the wild card right as they finally climbed in this thing and have had some semblance of consistency on that front. But final thing I will say on the heading end, folks, then we will quickly do a prospect report to wrap up the show. It is as follows, everybody. On the heading end from the Mets today, they were out hit by the Angels today by a final score of 3-2 that we saw, but they actually out hit the Angels 5-4 in what was a battle of the mediocrity. The Mets had a 149 expected batting average to the Halos 114. The Mets should have won this series, but they let the Angels take it away because, of course, Ron Washington did somehow. Lindor 1 for 3 with an RBI. Lindor is at a 256 average and under at 800 OPS now on the season. Hopefully, Lindor cracks that 800 OPS sooner than later again. Brandon Nimmo 0 for 3 with a 235 average at 766 OPS. And a walk, JDM 0 for 3 with a walk at 265 average and a 798 OPS. Pete Alonso 0 for 3. Bad day at the plate for Pete, 241 average, 790 OPS. Jesse Winker with his first, I would say, quality hit as a Met there with a runner on at least in Alonso. We see 1 for 4 because Alonso got on via the hit by pitch at 255 255 average, 780 OPS. Tyrone Taylor did not get an at-bat, but a 236 average, 678 OPS. Mark Vientos over 4, 280 average, 883 OPS. Francisco Alvarez 1 for 4 with a run scored, 2 strikeouts like Vientos, 258 average, 741 OPS. McNeil 1 for 3 with the McDouble, 236 average, 665 OPS. And Harrison Bader with an RBI single, a pair of strikeouts on the day like JDM as well, 268 average, 711 OPS on the year for all those Metsies. So let's get into the prospect reports, everybody. What is happening with the Syracuse Mets? Did they play their game today? If so, how did they fare? Same thing can be said with the Cyclones. Same thing can be said with the Rumble Ponies. And the same thing can be said with the Port St. Lucie Mets. And we look at the Syracuse Mets. They lost today by a final score of 4-1. Mike Vassell gave up some early runs in this one. Nothing too crazy, but not the greatest outing for Vassell, who did give the Mets length at least. 6 innings of 8 hit, 4 earned run, 2 walk, 2 strikeout ball, a 5.46 ERA on the season for Vassell. We saw Max Kranick pitch 1 scoreless inning with a hit. He gave up a 3.2 ERA on the year for the Mets diehard fan growing up, 2 strikeouts. And yes, Tyler Zuber, who was acquired by the Mets at the trade deadline, a flamethrowing right-hander that tops out 98, that has some really interesting mix of his pitches, that started the year in indie ball with the Long Island Ducks. The Mets acquired from the Tampa Bay Rays after just 3 innings of work at the MLB level this season. Zuber, who hadn't been anything close to MLB regular for multiple years, comes out and gives the Mets a scoreless outing today. Did walk a pair, but struck out 1 and has a 3 ERA at the minor league level that we have seen this season. So that's the latest there from the Syracuse Mets. As we now pan to the Rumble Ponies, we did mention earlier in the show, but I will reiterate again because I'm going to cut it out after the fact for my replay viewers because it's a separate video posted on the channel already. Let's get into here what happened with Reed Garrett and Sean Reed-Foley with the Mets rehab assignments of the relief options, 2 guys that expect to impact the Mets sooner rather than later. Bobby, I see your messages in the chat, my man. You were not blocked or anything like that, so I want to be concerned there just in case if you were. Let me make sure that you were up in the chat. Yeah, no, Bobby, I do see your comments in my software. Let me make sure that I also see them. Oh, here's a don't. Bobby, I completely missed it. I apologize. Bobby G, let's get some love and hype in the chat for Bobby G with the $10 holla. I hope this is enough to buy diapers for Shea, the Mets' future ace in 2045. I couldn't have agreed more, my man. Bobby, thank you so much for the support. I apologize for the hiccup that I had you away from the channel for a little bit. Not exactly sure what happened there, but I appreciate you being here and taking the time, certainly to donate as well. Thank you so much, Bobby G. Happy to have you. Thank you once more for the donation, my friend. Hope you are doing fantastic this evening. And thank you guys all so much as we're just 30 likes away here live on YouTube from 100. Continue to smash those buttons if you haven't already. Thank you so much in advance. But the Syracuse Mets, they lost today. The Rumble Ponies lost. They went 0 for 3. Drew Gilbert on the offensive end there for the Syracuse Mets. I'm actually going to go back and check in a second. But before I do, let me just touch here on the Rumble Ponies. Alex Ramirez 1 for 3. Nothing else really notable there on the offensive end. Moreno went 5 scoreless innings, including 9 strikeouts and just 1 walk. 0 earned runs, which we love to see there for Moreno, a pitching prospect for the Mets, the 25-year-old. He has a now, I believe, what ERA is he on the season? 3.82. Solid stuff. Reed Garrett gave up 3 earned runs, 4 hits, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, and 0.1 innings. Reed, that was his first outing to begin his rehab. Not concerned there. Sean Reed-Foley did not give up a run in his 0.2 innings pitched. Did walk 3, however, and struck out 1. 2 guys that will be back in the Mets bullpen as soon as this week, potentially, according to Mets manager Carlos Mendoza, that we highlighted earlier in the show for my live viewers that checked it out already. But now let's get into 2 latest updates on the Cyclones and then the Port St. Lucie Mets, and then we will get into everything else, folks, and wrap up the show. Again, appreciate everyone that's been taking the time. When we take a look at the Cyclones, what did they do in Brooklyn? And the Cyclones, they lost to Aberdeen by a final score of 5-2. Aberdeen, that reminds me a lot of KG Elephant. If you guys are music lovers, if you guys know the band KG Elephant, one of my favorite bands ever, cannot wait to see them sometime this year. KG Elephant has one of their first ever singles that came out a decade plus ago called Aberdeen. It's a really cool video of a dinosaur, a claymation dinosaur that is misunderstood, or dragon, if you will, basically kind of like the Grinch, where he's up, on a hill, away from everyone, when he's really not a bad guy, and he's just trying to get the humans to understand him before it's too late. I know it's completely random, but That's the only other time I'm going to think of the word or name Aberdeen. So there you go. For the Cyclones, they lost 5-2, as I mentioned. Nick Morabito continues great contact play as leading things off for the outfield option there for Morabito with a 289 average, a 727 OPS, 1 for 3 on the day. Jacob Reimer won 1 for 2 with an RBI, 300 average, over 800 OPS in the season for him. Nothing else notable there on the offensive end, nor was there anything notable on the pitching end. So now let's wrap things up by getting to the Port St. Lucie Mets there and see how they are looking, if they won or if they faltered in their matchup. Carson Benj in the Mets system already. Yes, the Mets have officially signed him, but he has not begun, any games or anything like that yet. Once those things happen, we will talk about them. The game was canceled at Port St. Lucie because of inclement weather there at Fort Myers. So that's the latest there on the Mets prospect end, everybody. Nothing else to really make note of there. The same way that there's really nothing else to make note of in today's show, folks. That about just does it. Thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. We will be back live tomorrow, as we always do, hopefully for a big win, and what I do believe would be a series sweep of the Cardinals if the Mets can win tomorrow, not because of a one series win, but rather if we go back to the Cardinals-Mets series that they had earlier this year, which led to their game that was postponed to tomorrow. I'm pretty sure the Mets won the first 2 games in that series. Correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, I'm going to correct myself right now before I get out of here, because I'm awfully curious. Did they split that series, or did they win the first 2? Okay, the Mets played the Cardinals here going back in the month of May, and they somehow won the first 2. For the Mets to win the first 2 in May when they only had a total of 8 wins in that month is nothing short of impressive. So both the Cardinals and the Mets have been playing much better since they last matched up 2+ months ago in the early month of May. Let's see how they fare tomorrow, everybody. Huge game tomorrow, and a huge final 7 games of this road trip, and is inexcusable to drop anything more than what the Mets had to this point. Get your head out of your ass. Get back into the groove. Get back to rolling, boys. When it comes to the offense, hit early and often. I want to see consistency. I want to see a lack of bonehead decisions made by not only Mendoza at times with his configuration on the offensive end later in the ballgame, but ultimately having faith in these guys and really trusting them in key spots. We have seen it time and time again, but I need to see some accountability. If you're not going to be hitting, especially in certain spots, move things up in the lab. Do what you have to do. Again, the offense, I'm not overly concerned on the grand scheme of things, but in the interim, right now, they're not playing nearly to the caliber that they should be, and it might get worse before it gets better. Let's avoid that possibility. Let's make it a certainty that the Mets get back in the win column against the Cardinals tomorrow. That'll do it for your guy, Wardy, everybody. See you all in the next one. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your boy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby.